This is just a dream. This isn't real. This is just a dream. He isn't real. He isn't real.
In the 80s, every kid knew about Freddy Krueger, the child killer who gets burned to death, then comes back in people's nightmares. So I heard about him before I ever saw any of the movies. I knew about the gloves, the striped sweater, and that he was a wise-cracking ghoul.
Come to Freddy.
But with the first Nightmare movie, it leans more towards pure horror than gags, though there are a few gags too. Before this, most slasher films were just a guy with a knife going around killing people, but Nightmare brought a new twist to the genre. The first Nightmare on Elm Street reminds me of the original Halloween in that it has a suburban atmosphere and teenagers having sex, or at least trying to. So we have Nancy, Tina, Rod, and Glenn. And yes, Glenn is played by Johnny Depp. I bet none of the actors in this knew they were working with one of the biggest future stars of Hollywood, though Depp was new at the time and is actually one of the weaker characters in the film. He hadn't yet matured as the respected actor we know today.
Sorry.
There's just 4 kids here, whereas the later Freddy films have more characters. I guess they wanted to set up more bodies for Freddy to kill off. Tina's set up at the start to be this film's lead, but she's murdered by Freddy about 18 minutes in. So then Nancy becomes the main star of the film. She quickly discovers that she needs to keep herself awake to defend herself from the horrible nightmares. She spends the majority of the movie drinking coffee and taking pills. Then there's Rod. He gets blamed for Tina's death and gets put in jail. During a dream, a blanket slowly moves around Rod's neck and hangs him. The special effect is pretty well done. Today, that blanket would have been CG, and there'd be no reason for it when it can be done with practical effects like this. It was directed by Wes Craven, and it's really interesting the way he depicts the dream sequences. For example, a person might go from a boiler room to the outside of the house just by jumping. Just like in a dream, locations just switch because none of it really makes sense. And as far as the dreams go, I think they are most effective in the first film, where in later Nightmare films, the dreams become so exaggerated with giant sets and it goes overboard. The father doesn't believe Nancy until the end of the movie. Usually with these 80s horror flicks, there will be at least one veteran actor. With Halloween, it's Donald Pleasance. With Friday the 13th, it's Betsy Palmer. And here, we have John Saxon. He's very believable in the role. Whenever I watch this movie, I get so pissed off that he doesn't listen to his daughter. The parents commit Nancy to a hospital to test her dreams and get her some help. They believe she's just traumatized because of the murders. While in the hospital bed, she starts freaking out during her dream, and when she wakes up, she pulls Freddy's hat out of the dream. And still they don't believe her. Too bad she pulled out a hat. Hell, it's a dream. She should have robbed a bank and brought back a sack full of money. That would have been a plan. A fun fact, the doctor in this scene was played by Charles Fleischer, who did the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Hide me, Eddie! Please!
She sets up a bunch of booby traps in her home, and the plan is to grab Freddy out of the dream world and into the real world where he's vulnerable to the traps. Wes Craven had a lot of his female stars become survivalists, actually. Gee, Wes Craven likes booby traps a lot. The People Under the Stairs, The Hills Have Eyes. Maybe he should have directed Home Alone. The ending is different in the film than in the original script. Originally, a school bus was supposed to come up to the house and Nancy got on and just rode away into the fog. However, the producer wanted to give a hook for the possibility of a sequel, so they changed the bus to a convertible, and when the top comes down, it has Freddy's stripes, like they're in his power. And then the mother is ripped through the door by Freddy's arm. It was all about setting up the next film. Wes Craven didn't like the idea of changing the ending, and I don't blame him. But history is history, and the Nightmare on Elm Street series became a legacy. Freddy himself was played by Robert Englund in all the movies from the first one till Freddy vs. Jason, and also in the TV series Freddy's Nightmares.
Freddy's Nightmares.
He's a bit different in this movie than the later incarnations. Though he does joke a little, overall he's a bit more serious here. When you see him, he's always in shadow, and you really don't get a very good look at his face, which I like because it brings more mystery to the character. As the series went on, it leaned more towards horror comedy, and many criticize him for that reason. But this first one is truly a scary movie. There's nothing more frightening than somebody who can kill you in your sleep when you're completely helpless. For all those kids in the 80s who were afraid to go to sleep, I know how you felt, because I was one of them.